Now I want to speak directly to the British people to explain why. We are approaching one of the biggest decisions this country will face in our lifetimes, whether to remain in a reformed European Union or to leave. The choice goes to the heart of the kind of country we want to be.
Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panwo TV. Well, I've had mine. Have you had yours yet? Yes, our fearless leader, the Right Honourable David Cameron MP, has sent a flyer, has ordered Her Majesty's Government PLC. PLC must stand for, I don't know, pig-loving person. He's ordered them to send everyone in the country, every single household in the country, a leaflet explaining why we should stay in the EU, why we should vote to stay in the EU referendum coming up on the 23rd of June. The government has only ever once done this twice before, as far as I know. It's certainly within my lifetime. The first one, it sent a leaflet around about nuclear war and the effects of nuclear bombardment during the Cold War. And sometime in the 80s, they sent a flyer around about AIDS. The facts about AIDS and HIV and things like that. That's the only time before the government has ever done this. They've done one of these nationwide leafleting campaigns. Now, the amount it cost to send it to every single household in the country is £9.8 million. And they sent it by first class post. I know because it arrived this morning. Just literally just after he said he was sending them out. So that's £9.8 million. Now, £9.8 million could pay the salaries of several thousand junior doctors. It could house over 100 pensioners for the rest of their lives. It could pay for. It could be put into schools. It could be put into hospitals. It could be put into all kinds of things. Yet the government decided to, because it believes the government's position is we should stay in the European Union, as you've just heard, and they're perfectly willing to spend our money on their own propaganda. They're quite happy to do that. Now, on their own. Oh dear. See, there's two sides to this story. Obviously, there's the side that wants to stay. It's not just the government. Some other people have said to me they think we should stay in the European Union. And there's the other side, the side which I support, which is that we should leave the European Union. I think we should leave. I think we should leave. I think we should leave now, and I think we should leave completely. I don't believe in any stepping stones or any sort of like timetable for freedom. I believe we should get out now. We should get out immediately. I don't think we should even have a referendum. Because you can't have a referendum on treason, which is what it is. You just tear up our membership papers and you jail the people responsible, which includes that pig-loving person who decided to send everyone these damn leaflets. Oh. It is incredible, actually. I mean, at the end, I'll show you a bit of David Icke about what he says about it. He's absolutely right. And I'll do some more videos on the EU coming up to the referendum. The European Union is of course a political federation. It's not a common market. And this is what people keep telling me. They keep saying, "Oh well, we've already had a referendum. We had a referendum in 1975. We decided to stay in." Well, the thing is, what the referendum was for was a common market. Now, I'll do another whole video about this later on, but. It was the European Economic Community, the EEC. Now, Prime Minister Edward Heath, he in 1972 entered us into the EEC. I mean, the European Union goes back a lot further. I mean, it can be found in it was planned before World War II, and it can be found in the political writings of several people, including Oswald Mosley, Joseph Stalin, and people. Oh, that's such a rather controversial character, shall we say? But the EC was founded, I think, in 1972. Britain was certainly entered into the EC in 1972. Ted Heath did it without our permission. He then gave us a retrospective referendum 3 years later in which, lo and behold, people said, let's stay. Why? Because it's a free trade zone, it's a common market. But few people realised that what was going on. I mean, one of them was Tony Benn, who sadly died. He's one of the few statesmen I feel any sense of respect for. He warned people at the time. He said, this is a first step towards a political federation. He said, the various countries of the European Union, which they did. Have you noticed the EU never calls its member? It calls them member states. It never calls countries that have joined it countries or nations. It calls them member states, and that's very, very interesting because Nevada is a member state of the United States of America, and the European Union is a political federation every bit as much as the USA or Brazil or any of these other various federations around the world. It's not a singular state; it's a federation, but. Of course, as you see in the USA, more and more power is being gobbled up by the federal government in Washington. We see the same here. The European Commission is taking more and more power from the people. But some people still think we should stay in. Some people, I mean, there's been opinion polls about this. There's a lot of parallels between this and the Scottish referendum, I should point out. At the moment, it's like a half and half of people who want to stay in and people who want to leave, with a large undecided pool. That's exactly what we saw before the Scottish independence referendum. So it's easy to just have a little bit of a nudge either way, and people come off the fence. People come off the fence and they become die-hard Europhiles. Now, for whatever reason, which we can explore, the European Union is very, very important to the globalist agenda. They got rid of the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, because she was opposed to the EU. The Iron Lady turned out to be nothing more than a paper dolly, and she was removed by the men in grey suits, as they were called at the time. David Pig-loving Cameron, whatever you want to call him, I can think of some pretty awful names to call him, and he deserves them all. He is now desperate. He called this referendum with just over 4 months' notice. It's now barely more than 2 months. 4 months' notice. The Scottish referendum, there was 2 years' notice. Now he was committed to doing it before the end of 2017 because it was he put it in his election manifesto last year. He's been in power. He's been in office now again. He's renewed his place in office for almost a year now. One of his election manifestos was that he would give us a referendum, an in-out referendum on European Union. The reason he did that was to stop Tory voters leaving and joining UKIP. He had to head them off. But he never thought he'd have to ever fulfil the promise because he thought he'd get another coalition with the Lib Dems. Like up till then, he'd been in coalition with the Liberal Democrats and Nick Clegg was his deputy. Now suddenly the Lib Dems have crashed out completely. They're finished. They've had their 5 minutes of fame and power and glory, and they're just they've been betrayed everything they stood for, and they're gone. Anyway, as that's an aside, Cameron now thought he'd get another coalition with the Lib Dems, which would mean that he could conveniently find some way to wriggle out of his commitment to the referendum. Of course, this referendum should have been offered before all this started. It should have been offered 30 years ago, and it wasn't. Oh. What he's going to do now, it's pretty obvious that he's desperate. I mean, why he's called it at such short notice is because I think Cameron just wants to steamroll everyone through it as quickly as possible. So that the out campaign, the people who want to leave, don't have time to organise, they don't have time to raise funds, they don't have time to get their act together, basically. And of course, remember, the organised campaign saying we should leave the European Union is privately funded through donations. You can't take taxpayers' money and spend it on these glossy little things. It's so unfair. And also, I think there's another financial crash coming, the big drop. I think the bankers have decided they're going to pull the plug again. These things are engineered, I should point out. They don't just happen. They're not just part of the natural cycle. They happen. They're made to happen. And Cameron wants to get the referendum out of the way, basically before the economy completely tanks, and people say, well, we don't want to be in the Eurozone, do we? So that's basically the situation we're in, and we're going to have a referendum on the 23rd of June. Whether you vote or not, I don't. Thing is, I don't know if I'm going to vote. Well, to be honest, I'm not on the electoral register actually right now. I'm not registered to vote anyway, so I'd have to register. If you do, fair enough, but do bear in mind that it's far more important, really, that we actually monitor this election independently to make sure it's fair. Because if you remember the Scottish independent referendum, they were robbed. They were robbed. I mean, there's if you ever watch Enigma TV with Chris Everard, he actually has found footage which shows the yes votes. The yes votes should Scotland become an independent country. The yes votes were put onto the no table surreptitiously. Remember, no one ever thinks that the mother of parliaments is a country in which elections need to be monitored. No one ever suggests that. It's just, of course, there are all kinds of institutions and procedures for dealing with new democracies that have emerged out of dictatorships in the Middle East or in the former Soviet Union and places like that. There's all kinds of monitoring operations that they do to make sure the new elections are fair. No one ever thinks anyone needs anything like that here. But, this is the mother of all parliaments, the land of the free, the goddess of democracy. So, so you've got to watch out for that this time, because I've got a feeling they will try and fiddle the ballot as a last resort. Before now and then, though, I mean, they're going to pull out all the... David Cameron's going to go up to his attic and he's going to rifle through his box of dirty tricks and he's going to pull out every big gun he can find and he's going to use it. We're going to be told this country is going to descend into the dark ages if we leave the EU. We're going to be living in mud huts and eating porridge made from dead worms if we leave the EU. It really is. And I'd just like to say to the people who... There's people I know who just are convinced that we should stay in the EU. One of them almost fell out with me on Facebook because he thinks we should stay in the EU and I don't. And it was like incredible. I just think to myself, how do you... What about Boudica? How about Queen Boudica? How would we explain to Queen Boudica that, as British people, that some of us... Well, we think we need to be part of this continental empire in order to survive, and the country won't survive without it. How do we explain that to Queen Boudica? No, I'm not going to have a Boudica moment now, okay? I've already had one of those a few months ago in my Celtic Mirrors video. I can't afford to have too many Boudica moments. They're too draining on me emotionally. All right, it was just a thought that came to me, and I just thought, well, it just shows, doesn't it, how mind controlled we are, how feeble we become as a people, as a species. Anyway, let's have a look at this masterpiece of literature, shall we? Right, well, it came like this. As you can see, it was just put through our letterbox, open like that. Very sort of glossy. Her Majesty's Government. Why the government believes that voting to remain in the European Union is the best decision for the UK. The EU referendum Thursday, the 23rd of June 2016. Of course, on the back it says, the government believes that voting to remain in the European Union is the best decision for the UK. It protects jobs, gives us a stronger economy, provides security. The EU referendum is a once-in-a-generation decision, unless they get the result they don't want. The government believes that it is in you and your family's best interest that the UK remains in the European Union. Vote on the 23rd of June 2016. If you'd like further information, there's their website. Now, the reason I think they've put these on the covers is because they know that most of the people who get this through the post, that's all they'll read. Well, I'm not. I'm going to read a little bit more and see what it's like. Right, we open it up. And we can see, hope you can see it. And it's all very, very shiny, isn't it? And so you got the little calendar there. This is your chance to decide your own future in the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom. It's important that you vote. Yeah, so here we have a little picture of a calendar. It's like a little mother's magazine, isn't it? It's really, really genial and suburban. An important decision for the UK. On the 23rd of June there will be a referendum. There's your opportunity to decide if the UK remains in the European Union, EU. It's a big decision. One that will affect you, your family and your children for decades to come. The UK has secured a special status in a reformed European Union. Right. Bullshit alert. What's been happening is David Cameron has spent the last few months in Brussels renegotiating the European Union's entry into the UK, or the United Kingdom's membership of the European Union. And what he's been, this is essentially what was done in Scotland, right? Do you remember just before the Scottish referendum, there was like a Devo, I call it the Devo Max bribe, and this is equivalent of the Devo Max bribe. They essentially said to the Scottish people, if you vote to stay as part of the European Union, we'll give you maximum devolved government. Just vote to stay in the UK and you'll get all that. Now I hope the same scam doesn't work twice in a row. I really hope it doesn't. Not twice in as many years, at least. Now it's less than 2 years ago now. Things: we will not join the Euro, we will keep our own border controls, the UK will not be part of further European political integration. What? Do you mean there's going to be some? We were told. This is essentially them finally admitting that it's always been a plan for there to be further European political integration. They never said that before, did they? They never said that before when it comes to the Maastricht Treaty, the Lisbon Treaty. There will be tough new restrictions on access to our welfare system for new EU migrants. We have a commitment to reduce EU red tape. Wow. You can't reduce EU red tape without getting out of the EU. The thing about it is, like, this is so false and so superficial. Once they have a yes vote, they have a mandate for essentially to do what they like. It's full steam ahead. They can always say, well, look, you voted for this, didn't you? No. The government believes the UK should remain in the EU. Please. This leaflet sets out the facts. Facts, not opinions. And explains why the government believes a vote to remain in the EU is in the best interests of the people of the UK. It shows some of the choices the UK would face if there were a vote to leave. Drum roll. Let's have some scary music. If you'd like further information. Okay. Right, we have a picture here. Some hard-working young men in boiler suits. Clean boiler suits too. They've just been washed. They're not oily or dirty or greasy. Over 3 million jobs are linked to exports from the European Union. Yeah. You don't want to take those jobs away from these guys, do you? A stronger economy. The EU is by far the UK's biggest trading partner. EU countries buy 44% of everything we sell abroad, from cars to insurance. Remaining in the EU guarantees our full access to the single market. By contrast, leaving creates uncertainty and risk. The EU single market has over 500 million customers, and our economy over 5 times bigger than the UK's. And the single market makes it easier and cheaper for the UK companies to sell their products outside the UK, creating jobs as a result. Being inside the EU also makes it more attractive for companies to invest in the UK, meaning more jobs. Over the last decade, foreign companies have invested 450 billion in the UK, equivalent to £148 million every day. Oh my God, you mean we can't trade with the European Union unless we're a part of it? My goodness. Did you know that trade between Britain and Europe only began in 1992 with the Maastricht Treaty? Did you know that? I didn't. I thought we'd been trading for centuries and millennia before then. I thought they found gold in ingots on Pool Beach, which were 5,000 years old, which had been traded with Spain. But oh no, we cannot turn a penny with any other country in our continent unless we're part of a political federation. I'm being sarcastic, by the way. I hope you noticed. Oh dear, it's like they think we're stupid. They really think we're stupid. They think these people won't understand about bilateral trade deals, will they? They won't understand about how we can actually negotiate new trade agreements and trade zones with independent countries within the European Union, within all the former European Union, if the other countries do the sensible thing and get the hell out. They actually think we can't do that. They actually think we can't just Do what is beneficial for... See, these things here that they're talking about here, they suit both the customer and the seller. Both the manufacturer and the consumer benefit. It's in the interests of all of both the market and the industry to set up convenient deals, to economic deals, to buy and sell goods and to create goods. You don't need a political federation for that. You don't need a superstate across the continent to organise it. People have been doing it for thousands of years. Right, improving our lives. Oh, thank goodness for that. Look, this very prosperous young woman here with a bulging handbag and a full bag of shopping. I notice she's got all nice oranges. None of them got black bits on. Yes, that's right. If the UK voted to leave the EU, the resulting economic shock would risk higher prices of some household goods. The cost of living. If the UK voted to leave the EU, the resulting economic shock would put pressure on the value of the pound, which would risk higher prices of some household goods and damage living standards. Losing our full access to the EU single market would make exporting to Europe harder and increase costs. Well, I've already been through that. Travel abroad. Oh, let's just deal with this first, okay? The bedroom tax. All right, these people actually stating, people like Cameron, are actually pretending that our membership of the EU makes our lives better. What have we had since we've been in the EU? We've had the bedroom tax, we've had people working in slave labour jobs, we've had pensioners freezing to death, we've had starvation on the streets, we've had people killing themselves rather than going to the Atos employment agencies and health checks, so they can be dragged out of their wheelchairs and made to stack shelves in supermarkets. Being in EU has not really improved our lives particularly, has it? We've got to realise, the thing about Cameron, all right, and the Cameron government, we've got to realise is, he doesn't represent Britain, he doesn't represent the United Kingdom, the people or the geographical area of the United Kingdom. He is a traitor who is an EU clone and a New World Order hack. And one day he's going to be in court, I hope. So when Cameron does these things, he's just saying this to scare us. If we stayed in the EU, there'd still be bedroom tax, there'll still be workfare, all these things will still exist. He knows it. He's just trying to scare us. He's just trying to essentially say. Stephen Molyneux was saying something similar on his radio show the other day. He was saying that, oh my God, if the slaves dare to revolt, it'll make the slave master so much more violent, won't it? Maybe you should just be good slaves and do your job and endure suffering. Travel abroad. Now this is something that affects someone very close to me, because I know someone who wants to go and live in Spain. Okay. Millions of UK citizens travel to Europe each year. The EU has made this easier and cheaper. EU reforms in the 1990s have resulted in a drop in fares of over 40% for lower cost flights. For next year, mobile phone roaming charges will be abolished across the EU, saving companies 38p a minute. Well, those charges could be abolished by national governments, national networks if they wanted to, as far as the mobile phones go. As far as the travel abroad goes, did you travel abroad? If those of you who remember life before the EU, did you ever go and have holidays in Spain? In the 1960s, didn't you go off merrying it on the beaches? Didn't you see Carry On Abroad, a film that was made in 1970 about Brits abroad in Spain? My goodness, you couldn't travel abroad before the EU. Oh my God. Makes it easier and cheaper. Again, they're making it. They're lying. They're pretending that you need to be part of a political federation that expands the entire continent and takes away individual freedoms, run by an unelected EU Commission. That's the only way you can have free travel abroad, when it's perfectly easy for different countries where there's an awful lot of interaction in terms of their people. For instance, Britain and France, where I think there's millions of people go across between Britain and France every year. It's very easy to have bilateral customs agreements between those two countries. It's not difficult. You don't need a nation, a dictatorial communist state that spans the entire continent. You don't need that. EU membership also gives UK citizens travelling the right to purchase free or cheaper public healthcare. Well, why don't you just sign your E111 form, for goodness sake? We always used to do that. It's not hard to remember. Some argued if Little would change if we left the EU, but there are no guarantees UK customers would keep these benefits if we left. There's never guarantees of anything, but I'll tell you what, if we stay in this super state, there's an absolute guarantee it's going to be a stepping stone to a new world order. For goodness sake, people have these... George Orwell lived in Spain. I've read Homage to Catalonia. I know he was fighting in the war there, but he lived in Spain before the war. And this was in like 1934. There was no EU in 1934. How did he get there? How did he possibly manage to go to Spain? Oh my goodness. It's all nonsense. What happens if we leave? Oh, we have here a productive harbour with ship being loaded up. What happens if we leave? Voting to leave the EU would create years of uncertainty and potential economic disruption that would reduce investment and cost jobs. Yes, it would. It's absolutely certain. Oh, God. The government judges it could result in 10 years or more of uncertainty as the UK unpicks our relationship with the EU and renegotiates new arrangements with the EU and over 50 other countries around the world. Oh, God. It's going to be so difficult, isn't it? We never did it before, so we're going to have to do it again. Some argue we could strike up a good deal quickly with the EU because they want to keep access to our money. Exactly, yeah. But the government's judgment is that it would be much harder than that. Less than 8% of UK exports come to the UK, of EU exports come to the UK. Well, 44% of UK exports go to the EU. What's that got to do with it? The government's judgment is it will be much harder than that. They don't explain why. It's because they're just saying that. They just pulled that out of their arse, didn't they? No other countries managed to secure significant access to the single market without having to follow EU rules over which they have no real say, pay into the EU, except EU citizens living and working in their country. Oh, but again, we can do that. I think it'd be easier if other countries do the same. If other countries follow our lead and leave the European Union, then it's going to be a lot more easy. It'll be much more simple. So in a sense, they've got a point here in that if Britain goes it alone and the other countries don't follow, it's going to be more difficult. But hopefully with Britain leaving, which I think is the largest economy in the EU, that the Federation itself will fall apart. I hope it does. Controlling immigration and supporting and securing our borders. The UK is not part of the EU's border-free zone. That's the Schengen Agreement. We control our own borders, which gives us the right to check everyone, including EU nationals arriving from continental Europe. Immigration. The government has negotiated a deal that will make our benefit system less of a draw for EU citizens in future. New EU migrants will not have full access to certain benefits if they've worked here for up to 4 years. The government will have greater powers to take action where there is abuse of our immigration system. Well, I've said this before and I've said it again. If you don't like mass immigration, there's only one solution to mass immigration, and that is to make do things like declassify free energy, reorganise the economic globalist system, so that basically people won't want to come to Britain because their own countries will be perfectly nice places to live in. That's the ultimate solution to all this. Now, what they're saying is this is a double-edged sword here, because they're kind of saying securing borders. The problem is securing borders is often used as a justification for increasing authoritarianism, but that's kind of a side issue. But it's not going to be any better if we're in the EU. It's not going to be any better, isn't it? You see, if anything, it'd probably be easier. It'd probably be easier if we had control of our borders. Well, I mean, I've got to be careful, because if you get dragged into this road, you can very easily get into a situation where you start going along with security measures such as fingerprinting and things like that. But some argue that leaving the EU would give us more freedom to limit immigration, but in return for the economic benefits of access to the European single market, non-EU countries such as Norway have had to accept the right of all EU citizens to live and work in their country. Are they saying, oh, well, they're going to hold us to ransom anyway, so you just got to do what they say? Well, I'll go into that later, actually. Keeping us safer. EU membership means the UK police can use the enforcement intelligence from 27 EU countries. They'll have access to fingerprint and DNA information. Right, well, that's again, you see, you want to be on that database, don't you? That's in a sense, they're almost saying here that this is almost a reason to leave. Do you want to be on the database? I know someone who was asked for their voice print the other day. They said no. And what happened to Interpol? We can use Interpol, can't we? If there are legitimate concerns in this area, then you don't need a political federation for different police forces to share information. EU cooperation makes it easier to keep criminals and terrorists out of the UK. Since 2004, using the European arrest warrant, over 1,000 suspects have faced justice in UK courts and over 7,000 have been extradited. To keep terrorists out of the UK, yes. The problem is, Mr Cameron, the intelligence agencies that actually cause most of these terrorist attacks are part of the British state and EU state anyway. Here we go, this is a big glossy picture here. We control our own borders, yeah. Well, that's, as I said, I've just been through that. Right. Here we have a lovely family here, being really, really happy. EU membership brings economic security, peace and stability. The UK is part of the EU, a group of 28 countries. Oh, they call them countries here. Do you notice that? They don't say member states. Crafty bastards. See, it's a country. You're not a member state. See, they're trying to make out it's not as bad as you think it is. Which exists to promote economic security, peace and stability. Does it? Well, that sounds very Orwellian to me. The EU operates as a single free trading market without taxes between borders. Again, I've said before, why not? You can set up bilateral deals with markets. You don't need, and as for tax, I mean, there was already duty-free deals years and years ago. This is why everyone buggered off to France to buy their wine, because it was duty-free, which meant it was enormously cheap. Most of the cost of alcohol, if you buy it in a British shop, is tax. If you buy a bottle of wine, it's £5. It's a really cheap bottle of wine, £5. Most of that's tax. That'd be £2 if it wasn't for the tax, or £1 something. It's really. So that's why people bugger off to France and get their wine. Well, you can still do that. That was done before the EU. You can still do it again. The UK has secured a special status in the EU. Yeah, for now. The UK has kept the pound and will not join the euro. Well, we've already lost our imperial measurements. Pretty largely. We still have miles, but everything now, have you noticed everything is now in millimetres and centimetres and metres? Everything's in centigrade. I mean, this is what I mean. We've lost. It was a ridiculous situation a few years ago, where a village shop, the man who ran the shop, who for centuries his ancestors ran that shop, and they sold their goods in pounds and ounces to their customers in the village, and everyone in the village liked it. The regulations meant that he had to switch to kilograms and grams. And the bloody government, he refused. He said no. And the government, they threatened to put him in jail. We've ensured that no UK powers can be transferred to the EU in the future without a referendum. Well, this in a sense is admitting their guilt. They're admitting that in the past there was a plan to transmit powers from the UK to the EU, and that they didn't give us a referendum on it deliberately. This is essentially an admission of guilt. Oh dear. The UK... It's crazy. The UK will keep full access to the single market. It will say on its rules, for every £1 paid in tax, 1p goes to the EU. Well, that's a hell of a lot of money. And that's money that I earn, we all earn. Oh. Well, the government judges what we get back in terms of job opportunity, job creation, economic security. The EU membership far outweighs the cost. Well, I've already gone into exactly what that can be easily worked out independently. We don't need to be part of a political federation. But there's a massive amount of tax. It costs 1 penny out of every pound of tax. That's 1% of all the exchequer is spent. It goes to the EU. I think someone said that was 170 billion pounds. Again, how much that could be put in hospitals? It could keep pensioners warm. Opportunities for you and your children. Oh. EU membership means you and your family have the right to live, work and study abroad in any of the other 27 other member countries. They use that word countries again, you see. They're not going to say member states because we're getting wise to it. It also guarantees many employment rights. Well, again, that's solvable without the EU. The UK as a leading force in the world. Well, I mean, I'm not an imperialistic person, but there used to be the British Empire. There was no EU when we had the British Empire. Not that I'm a fan of the British Empire. Just it's a fact. The UK is a strong, independent nation. Well, it could be. It's not at the moment. Our EU membership magnifies the UK's ability to get its way on issues we care about. That's a complete misnomer. It's a complete oxymoron. We are a strong, independent country that is part of a federation of which we are just one member state, of which we subsume our sovereignty. I don't get it. Logical gymnastics galore here. The EU action helped prevent Iran obtaining nuclear weapons. Yeah, which you sold them. They bloody sold them the nuclear weapons. It would have been easy to prevent Iran getting nuclear weapons by not selling it to them. The EU is a leading word on tackling climate change. Oh yes, of course. Watch my Merchants of Doubt video. All right. Right. The EU referendum is a big decision for you and your family's future. The referendum on Thursday, June the 21st, is your chance to decide if we shall remain or leave the European Union. The government believes it's in the best interests of the UK to remain in the EU. This way, to protect jobs, provide security and strengthen the UK's economy for every family in this country. A clear path into the future, in contrast to the uncertainty of leaving. Oh God, please, get me a sick bag. It just gives you the details about how to vote. Oh God. And that's the end of it. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Who needs quality literature when you've got this to read, eh? Absolutely unbelievable. Let's make no mistake about it. The European Union is a stepping stone to world government. There's many politicians and political theorists have said this, dating back a long way, going through back several centuries. For example, Joseph Stalin, no less a character than that, once said that the world revolution, the creation of a one world government, could be achieved. But he believed in a two-stage solution. That is, first of all, there'll be regional superstates, power blocks, which would then be merged into the one world government. George Orwell, who was a member of the Fabian Society, a cultural Marxist think tank, a fifth column infiltration agency, said that in his book 1984, which is a satire on all that, he explained how the different countries would be absorbed into giant states like Oceania, East Asia, Eurasia, and these would be constantly at war with each other, and they would change hands. The wars would simply change players almost seamlessly, and no one would even notice. One day Oceania is at war with East Asia, then it's at war with Eurasia. And that's probably what the model we're going to have for the New World Order, because Orwell, I think, was an insider and he knew about these things and he predicted them. This is why it's so important. I mean, Orwell, in his book, Britain, in 1984, was simply called Airstrip 1. It was nothing more than a giant airbase for use in the war by Oceania. Most of Oceania was covering North America. Britain was the single outpost of Oceania in Europe. All the rest was Eurasia. So, and they kept, that's right, there was constant war, and London was bombarded by these steamers, these big missiles. And it was hinted that these were false flags. Orwell's been right so many times before, why should he be wrong this time? It seems that the plan for the future, the project for the new world century and beyond, is the destruction of the nation state. Now, I'm not a nationalist, but I do believe in self-determination of peoples and cultures. If we're going to be free of the New World Order, we have to be ready for that. We have to be willing to say that, and to say that we're standing up for independent nations to fight for their independent freedom. That includes Britain. I thought the Scots should have a devolved government too. I used to be a Welsh nationalist. I used to think that Wales, I used to think there should be an independent Wales. And funny enough, I moved away from Welsh nationalism, and now I'm not a Welsh nationalist, but I do still think Wales. I'd like to see Wales independent. Oh, but the decision. This is the problem now. Do you vote or not? This is the question. I would not like to answer that. If I was on the electoral register, would I vote? I'm not sure. Should we boycott this election? Because you've got to realise that the election is almost certainly going to be rigged. Firstly, through black propaganda like this and other things that has happened. And secondly, through the fiddling of the ballot, as I explained earlier. And if somehow the plans to distort and muddy and pollute this process where the people have their say, so the people have their say, we'd be out tomorrow. This is why they've been so reluctant giving us this is why they haven't given us a referendum for more than 40 years, because they know people would say get out, and they don't want us to get out. If for some reason the plans to rig the election didn't work and we got a leave vote, do you think that's going to be the end of it? It wasn't when Belgium rejected the Maastricht Treaty, and Sweden and these other countries, when they rejected the Maastricht Treaty, what happened then? They had another one, and they had another, and they said we're going to keep going on, we're going to keep doing referendums until we get the result they want. There will be a second referendum probably, in which they'll find some reason to have another referendum. Now, if that doesn't work, things could get really nasty. There could be some really so I'm slightly wonky, aren't I? Let me just straighten myself out a little bit. The powers that be in the European Union and Britain, which are really the same people, it's the same people running the show, could organise a trade embargo with Britain. This would essentially put us under siege. It wouldn't surprise me if it comes to that, and maybe even war. Think I'm joking? I don't think so. So we've got to realise, if we're going to be free of the New World Order, we've got to be free of the EU. But being free of the EU is not going to be that simple. And when we're fighting back against the EU, we must realise that we must be aware of the bigger issues at stake. We mustn't fall into the trap of nationalism, and because nationalism itself has been subverted. It's been used. It's been used, for instance, over the immigration issue. I've explained before. They're controlling both sides in this. They're hoping to say, well, we'll stop immigration if you agree to a complete, unadulterated surveillance state, which is exactly what they want. I think the ultimate plan is actually to have a civil war in Europe between the immigrants and the natives. That's the plan. Out of which they can build a new kind of European superstate, which is completely and utterly as authoritarian as the one Hitler and Stalin and the others wanted. So I'll say more about this in a future video, okay, because I'll do some more on this before the actual date of the referendum. Maybe I'll talk more about the voting issue and things like that. But anyway, what am I going to do with this pesky leaflet? That's the question. Well, here it is. Here's the little thing I've been talking about. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with it? Well, guess what? I'm going to send it back to him. I'm going to send it back to him. I'll just get something hard, a hard surface to write on. It's DMT, the Spirit Molecule. That's a good book, that, yeah. And I'm going to, just going to write him a little letter to explain what I'm doing. Dear Pigfucker, no, Prime Minister. Let's be professional. I'm returning to you your piece of lying, scaremongering propaganda. That you paid for with my money. Shame on you. P.S. I don't have a photo of Miss Piggy to enclose for your private enjoyment. Sorry. Ben. And then, I'm using my real name. I'm not scared to use my real name. And so that's how I'm going to send it back to you. Dear Prime Minister, I'm returning to you your piece of lying, scaremongering propaganda that you paid for with my money. Shame on you. P.S. I don't have a photo of Miss Piggy to enclose for your private enjoyment. Sorry. And I wrote it with my Rich Planet TV pen as well. That's pretty appropriate as well, isn't it? Now, the address. There we go. Check you can still see me all right. Here we go. All right, here's the address. Now then, it is... turn it that way because I want to write... The Right Honourable Pigfucker... Sorry, Right Honourable David Cameron... MP, House of Commons, London, SW1A OAA. Right, and so what I'll do is that's just where I wrote down the address for the House of Commons. This thing, I'll just fucking rip this shit in half, put it in there. Yeah. So I'm sending it back to him ripped up. I'll put that in there like that. There we go. Funny thing about the Cameron, the pig business, it comes from the Bullingdon Club. Now Cameron was a member of the Bullingdon Club along with Boris Johnson. I'll take that down in a minute. But along with Boris Johnson and David Dimbleby, who does the Question Time, that complete propaganda show on BBC. Now, the Bullingdon Club are horrible. They were awful. They trash places up. They kidnapped a tortoise and killed it. They overturn dustbins. They smash up cars. They're a sort of posh equivalent of football hooligans, basically, and they have a terrible reputation here in Oxford. They really do. Absolutely terrible reputation. And Cameron was a member of them. Says it all, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm going to put a second-class stamp on it. He wasted first-class post of my money to send me this. I'm not wasting a first-class stamp on this piece of excrement. I'm sending it back second-class. So all that remains now is for us to post it. Thank you for watching. Hospital Port as Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.
If you are a few and you want to control the many, the more diversity of decision-making and independence of decision-making there is in the world, the less control you can have at the center. What you have to do is constantly centralize decision-making. So more and more, the decisions that affect more and more people are being taken by fewer and fewer people. The structure they want is a world government to dictate to the world, basically. And under that, a series of superstates, including the European Union. And the European Union is everything that I was warning about. In Britain today, like every other country of the European Union, something like 70 to 75% of the laws passed that British people must obey come not from the British Parliament, but from the European Union.